Amendment by Hinojosa.
Chair recognizes Ms. Hinojosa to explain her amendment.
Mr. Speaker and members, this bill is an awful bill and I hate it. But I have to admit, this bill is an opportunity for us to finally do something good for our students in public schools. Because second only to this bill, I hate the STAR test. Just like every other Texas mama, I hate the STAR test. This bill requires testing, but it allows private schools to choose which testing. Our kids in public school don't get to choose, but I guarantee you, if we had an amendment, and that's what this amendment does, in this bill that said, whatever test the students in public school take, the students in private school have to take, I guarantee you, our kids in public schools would never again have to take the STAR test, because the powers that be that are bringing you this bill would never require that of their students in private school. There's lots of good reasons to require the same test for our students in private schools as we're requiring for our students in public schools. Let's just start with what's fair. My kids have had to take the STAR test every year in the name of accountability because they get educated with taxpayer dollars. How is it fair if now we're going to give those taxpayer dollars to families to put their kids in private schools, or mostly families who already have their kids in private school, and not require the same exact test? It's not fair. What the STAR does to our kids in public school is awful. We've tolerated it for too long. My son tried to run away from school in second grade because they were already doing practice STAR tests for third grade. He asked to go to the bathroom, and then he bolted for the door. He got intercepted by the assistant principal. They called me to come get him, and he said, "Mommy, I was going to wait for you in the bushes every day, so you would pick me up and you wouldn't know." That's what we're doing to our kids. This is an opportunity to do something good for our ISD kids. And so, members, I am asking you to please use this one opportunity to, in this bill where we're giving money to families who already have their kids in private school, let's do something really great for our kids in public school. And so with that,
Mr. Speaker,
I move adoption.
Mr. Tinderhill, for what purpose?
will the representative yield for a
I
question?
do.
The gentlelady yield for questions. She
So I have one
yields.
question. You hate the bill, you don't like it. If this amendment gets on, are you voting for this bill you hate?
No, I'm not.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Buckley in opposition to the amendment. Ms. Collier, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman yield for questions?
The gentleman yield for questions.
Yes, I yield.
Gentleman yields.
Dr. Buckley, I want to ask about the testing. Are you going to move to table this, or are you going to allow us to have an up or down vote on this?
I'm going to move to table.
Okay, can you tell us why you would move to table?
Well, because I think it's been established by the author of the amendment just how reviled the STAR test is. And we will hopefully be meeting on this same floor at another time later this session to make sure that we get rid of the STAR test. But on policy matters, it is certainly not appropriate to require children that are not taught under state scope and sequence, that are not taught necessarily in the same order, to take a test that's designed for one system and not the other. But what the bill provides for is to make sure that we have accountability, but in a manner where we can truly measure the progress of kids.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Buckley, do you
Ms.
know
Leah
any?
Wilson, for what purpose?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a question.
Does the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes, I'll yield for a question.
Gentleman yields for questions.
Chairman Buckley, at private schools, do they all use the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills as their curriculum?
No.
do you feel that it would be important to have an assessment test that's meaningful, that would evaluate students on the curriculum that they use at that particular school, whether it be public school kids or private schools?
That is the only way to get a meaningful assessment, is to assess kids over the curriculum that they're taught.
And if you're like my district, do you hear a lot of complaints from teachers on meaningless and endless testing that doesn't really yield results? You want to know where your kids are at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the final, and testing all year. And if testing particularly would be harmful, I would think, for both retaining teachers and for the students when you're testing on a test that's not even aligned with the curriculum and you're doing it constantly.
Yeah. All I can say is the STAR test is only slightly more popular than the shingles. And so it's certainly not something that we would require a student that was in a setting where the curriculum was not aligned to have to take. And the norm reference test certainly provides that accountability.
And in that norm reference test, the private schools do have some latitude in choosing which norm reference test best aligns with their curriculum so that they can get meaningful data of where their students are progressing, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I
Mr.
respect.
Speaker,
Ms. Hinojosa, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for
Will
questions?
the gentleman yield for questions?
I yield for questions.
Gentleman yields.
Chairman Buckley, have you not heard repeated concerns with the STAR test that 5.5 million students in our public schools have to take?
I sure have.
And so, shouldn't we do what we can first and foremost for our 5.5 million kids in public schools, which are the only schools that will be an option for the vast majority of kids, whether or not this bill passes?
We'll have legislation on this floor, I suspect, to take care of that very problem.
But do you guarantee that this session we will pass legislation to do away with the STAR and move to nationally norm reference tests? Do you guarantee that?
I think that's highly likely.
But do you guarantee it?
Ms. Hinojosa, I've learned in this body, guaranteeing something is
So no.
I don't want to guarantee it, but I think you'll like my bill.
Okay, but you do not guarantee it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll like your bill, but I know something else. I know that there's somebody very involved in the making of that bill, and that's one Commissioner Mike Morath, and I know that he likes the STAR test. And so that is my concern, and why I would like to take this moment, this opportunity, to make sure we do right by our ISD students who should not have to take the STAR test anymore.
And we will do that.
Ms. Jones, for what purpose?
Yes, will the gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield for
ask-
questions?
Yes,
Yes, I
thank you.
yield for questions.
Gentleman yields.
Mr. Chair, did I just hear you say that kids in public school should take the STAR test? Kids in private school, even though they get the same money as public schools, should not have to take the STAR test, and that the kids in public schools should have to take the STAR test, which is, I think you said that it was slightly less popular than shingles. Did I hear you say that?
That's what I said, yes.
So can you help me understand why you believe kids in public school should have to take a test that's slightly less popular than shingles? And so I actually don't think that's funny, although I think you said it as a joke, because my grandmother had shingles, and it was terrible. It was terrible. She was in pain when she sat down on areas that had shingles, and so and it is absolutely relevant because you brought it up. So help me understand why we have a tale of two school systems when we literally have these two separate school systems getting the same $10,000. I don't understand that. This is not a joke. It is serious.
The bill provides that a child that takes an ESA will take the norm referenced assessment that's administered at that private school. And we will have legislation before this body to deal with the STAR test. And so hopefully we can get our kids. But really the reason behind the language in SB 2 is because of the fact that you should not assess a child using an instrument that's not designed around the curriculum that they're being taught. It's inherently unfair, and what we can do is we can make sure that we have meaningful assessments for kids in private schools that accept the ESA, but we can also reform and do away with the STAR test and have a much more impactful assessment system for public schools.
So I just heard you say you're going to do away with the STAR test, or I didn't hear you say that?
That is correct.
Because I just think that no kid should have to take something that is close to shingles.
Yeah.
And I just find it curious that the kids that have to take this STAR test are the kids who are least able to protect themselves.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Weiner, for what purpose?
will the gentleman yield
Will
for
the
some
gentleman yield
questions?
for questions?
I will yield for
The
questions.
gentleman yields.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Chairman. Representative Buckley, we came into this body together, did we not?
Yes, we did.
As far as I recall, every session we have been in this body together, this chamber has taken a swing at rolling back the number of STAR tests or trying to reform the system in some way. Is that consistent with your memory?
That is consistent with my memory as well.
Where do those efforts run into trouble?
To the east.
To the east. I'll be a little more specific and say to the chamber with green carpet.
That would be correct.
Chairman Buckley, do you not think we would have more leverage for these important STAR reform efforts that you have been a part of to get over the finish line if we aligned the testing standards for our private schools with the standards for public schools?
No, because I wouldn't provide for a student to take a test that I was intending to repeal. And again, Representative Sweener, what is most important for kids and their achievement is that they're assessed over in a manner that's consistent with the curriculum that they're being taught. And that is the point of what we do in SB2. Notwithstanding STAR test, repeal or kill the STAR, or whatever you want to call it, that is necessary as well, that we move into the next generation of assessments, that it is not one test one day that takes the high stakes nature out of that test, where it's easier on students and teachers and families, and it's also something more instructionally relevant and actionable by our classroom teachers, and that's what we will do in this body, I can assure you, before the end of this session.
So Representative Buckley, you know I'm aligned with you on that. The question I have again is, Representative Hinojosa's amendment merely aligns the two testing systems. We can still go amend and fix our public school testing system and make it work for everybody, both public and private. Why should we not use this opportunity to leverage that chamber to the east to work with us on STAR?
Because I believe the details of good policy matter. And at this point, with what has passed this body, and with the bill before us today, it is important to understand the impact.
The gentleman's
we can
time has
have.
expired.
I respectfully move to table this amendment.
The chair recognizes Ms. Hinojosa to close on the amendment.
Let me begin by saying it is not respectful to move to table for every single amendment that we're hearing that affects 5.5 million students in our public schools. We should be able to vote up or down on every one of these amendments that impact so many of our Texas students. All this amendment does is align the interest with the powers that be with the interests of Texas mamas. That's it. In that way, everybody wins. Let me tell you the problem that we have encountered every session that I've been here with this STAR test, and it's this. Everybody wants to move to what's known as a nationally norm reference test. What does that mean? That means that we get compared to other states so that we know how our Texas students are doing in comparison with other states. And Mike Morath can't put his fingers in it because it's nationally norm referenced. That is the problem that we keep encountering in Texas. There is no faith in the STAR test. Mike Morath gets to mess with it. He gets to say what it's about with his vendors. He works with them to create the product that nobody trusts. This is an opportunity, members, to finally do what's right for Texas school students and stop traumatizing them with an inappropriate test that they should not be taking. And I am urging you to do one thing good for our ISD students in this bill, and that is align the interests of the big dogs that brought us this bill and are forcing us to vote on it with Texas mamas who have been fighting this test for years. And with that, I move adoption.
Ms. Hinojosa sends up an amendment. Dr. Buckley moves to table. The question is on the motion to table. If you're in favor of the amendment, vote no on the motion to table. If you're opposed to the amendment, vote yes on the motion to table. A record vote has been requested. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Jones voting nay. Show Mr. Leach voting aye. Show Dr. Buckley voting aye. Show Mr. Alders voting aye. Show Mr. Vasut voting aye. Show Ms. Plisa voting nay. Have all voted? There being 85 ayes, 62 nays, the motion to table prevails. Following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Jones of Harris.